Hello and welcome to episode 307 of AvTalk. I am Ian Petchnick here, as always, with
Jason Rabinowitz. Hello, Ian. What's up?
Hello, Jason. Well, it's been a week of time that has felt like much longer than a week since the last time we sat down to record a podcast. So I've been through a whole home illness and we're bouncing back. So that's been not fun.
No, it doesn't sound fun at all.
I hope you're doing well, sir.
I am apparently doing better than you, which is, I mean, it doesn't mean I'm doing great, but I'll take it.
But you'll take it. No, so it's on the upswing. So I apologize. I say that to say that my voice is not 100%. So if you're listening to the podcast going, Ian sounds different, that's why. So still on the mend here. But we've got snow on the ground here in Chicago, and we're getting more. So our first honest to goodness snowfall of the year. And it's the middle of February, so.
Which is really strange because at least here in New York, we've had snow a couple times. DC and the Virginia area has been walloped a couple times the last couple of weeks.
I want a walloping. I want to be walloped.
The Southeast has also been rightfully walloped a few times recently. In Chicago, you haven't had snow yet until this week?
I mean, we've had snowfall, but this is the first time people were going, oh, it's actually going to snow. More than, an inch and a half. So I'm excited about it.
Huh, but what a strange winter.
Everything is strange now. Let's dig into this week's news. We've got plenty to talk about. Some very bad news, some good news, and some very strange news. So let's start with more bad news. We have another crash to discuss. This one, we don't have much information about. The investigation is just getting started, and the flight tracking data that we have doesn't really lend us a clue too much of what happened. I'm referring to the Bering Air Cessna 208 that crashed between Unalakleet and Nome, Alaska, late last week. The aircraft was carrying 9 passengers and a pilot and was found 35 miles southeast of Nome on the pack ice. So because it crashed onto moving ice, we're not actually sure where it crashed at this point. As part of the investigation, the NTSB will have to figure that part out of where the ice was when the aircraft actually crashed. There were no survivors on board. The wreckage was discovered by the Alaska Coast Guard a few days later. Unfortunately, no one survived the crash. The NTSB is investigating. NTSB Chair Jennifer Homedy traveled to Alaska.
Oh, wow.
So as tired as we are, I can only imagine how tired she is after the events of the past 2 weeks. Because not only has she been in Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia, she has been in Alaska, and I can only imagine how tired she is. But the NTSB is investigating that crash. We've had some history with Bering Air and their Cessna 208s. We sent our colleague Gabe out there a few years ago to do a couple flights with them and learn more about how they operate and what they do out there, keeping everyone connected out there. Because as we've talked about in the past, in Alaska, these aircraft are the way communities stay connected. And some of the only ways these communities stay connected. It's the only way to get between various places with any measure of efficiency, and is often the only way to get between these places, period. So these aircraft, and this airline especially, is critical to folks in Alaska. So finding out what happened, why it happened, and making sure it never happens again, certainly going to be something that folks want achieved as quickly as possible.
Yeah, Alaska oftentimes does not get the level of acknowledgement and reporting that it probably deserves whenever a crash or incident or something happens. We saw it even just a couple weeks ago where there was a lot of commentary about how PSA in DC was the first crash in the US since Colgan Air, and that's simply not really true. There are lots of crashes. Primarily, the one that most people forget is the Penn Air runway overrun that did lead to a death in Alaska, and that is often forgotten. So it's good to see Jennifer Homedy, the chair of the NTSB, not just taking an active part in the investigation, but actually going out to Alaska to make sure that this gets eyes on it that it deserves. Like you said, Ian, Alaska is way more dependent on aviation probably than anywhere else in the country, maybe other than Hawaii, I would say. But like you said, there's some places in Alaska you can only reach by aviation, really. So I don't know on this Cessna 208 if it has your traditional CVR, cockpit voice recorder, and flight data recorder. I don't believe it does. But there's an article from Alaska's news source that say there are components on board that they're referring to as non-volatile, which means the data is not erased when power is lost, and those have been sent to the DC recorder lab for reading out. But I don't know as far as actual black boxes as we know them are equipped on this particular aircraft.
Yeah, I don't know for sure, especially as this aircraft is operating in kind of a more commercial configuration. I'm not sure exactly what it's equipped with, but it would be interesting to see what data they can get off of the recorders, such as they are. I will say, if you're interested in Alaskan aviation, especially, and safety in aviation in Alaska, Colleen Mondor is
I was
the
just going to mention her.
person to follow. And so we'll put a link to her reporting in the show notes. She has been following Alaskan aviation for decades and probably knows more than anyone about accidents, incidents, and flying in Alaska. So her reporting has been absolutely crucial to understanding what's happening. So we'll put a link to that in the show notes. Let's shift back to DC and talk about some updates to the investigation into the midair collision between the PSA CRJ 700 and the U.S. Army UH-60 helicopter. The NTSB reports that on-scene investigative activities have now been completed, and they are shifting to working in their working groups so that they can continue the investigation wherever that needs to be and wherever that takes them. At DCA, the two other runways, 422 and 1533, have reopened. Those had been closed since the crash. All three runways are now reopened at DCA, though the arrival rate for, and Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, the arrival rate for aircraft is still limited below what it was pre-crash.
So I'm not 100% sure, but the FAA did put out a statement last night, that would be Tuesday, February 11th, saying the arrival rate was increased from 26 back up to 28, but also said that the actual maximum arrival rate is 32 for DCA. I don't know if DCA was actually operating at 32, because I believe it was reduced from 28 to 26 is what I recall reading over and over, but it is at 28 now, but the actual, quote, regular maximum hourly arrival rate is 32. But I don't think they were actually doing that.
Huh. Well, they've increased the arrival rate slightly again. And then today, the Wall Street Journal is reporting that the FAA is investigating a permanent change to how the airspace is structured around DCA to accommodate helicopters, or in this case, to no longer accommodate helicopters. This is just the Wall Street Journal reporting. The FAA has not commented on this or announced anything publicly yet, but given all of the comments that we've seen from FAA officials and the DOT so far, it wouldn't be outside the realm of possibility. And certainly I wouldn't be surprised if we do hear an announcement saying that they are permanently restricting helicopter flights in and around DCA.
Yep, that's probably prudent. Given the outcry we heard from pilots after this crash on how many close calls there have been and how tight the airspace is between arriving aircraft and the helicopter route, this just seems logical. And it's good to see that even the current administration could potentially take action on this and restrict helicopter traffic through the area. And I think the new DOT had saying, get in your damn Suburban and drive, or something like that.
Yeah.
It's a very,
To
things
Army
are
generals.
weird. Things are weird right now, okay? But that was good to see, at least. That's an actual safety-related thing the FAA can and might just do, as opposed to all the other nonsense they appear to be doing right now. So, hey, credit where it's due, even if it's the smallest thing they can do.
I mean, we'll take it. Let's go to Brazil, where this is a weird one.
Yeah, and probably could have been a lot worse than it was.
It definitely could have been a lot worse than it was, because a Gol 737-8 MAX struck a pickup truck on the runway during its takeoff roll.
Going like 100 knots or something like that?
We're not talking about wingtip to wingtip taxi. We're not talking about somebody drove the truck into the engine, cowling or something like that. This is maintenance pickup truck stopped on the runway, 737 MAX taking off, and thankfully it didn't hit the engines or anything like that to cause a fuel leak, spill, fire, anything like that. Basically drove over top of the pickup truck. And if you've ever seen Smokey and the Bandit and you know the sheriff's car, that's what happened. If you haven't, A, watch the movie. B, it took the entire top structure above the door frame off. So now the airport authority has a convertible pickup truck.
Hey, that's great. You usually have to pay extra for something like that. But
Yeah.
given the video and the imagery of the underbelly of this 7.3, it's not going anywhere for a long time.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's fixable because we've seen what's fixed, but it's going to take a while.
Yeah, it'll be on the ground for quite some time, if it ever flies again. Thankfully, no one was injured, neither in the vehicle. I'm not sure if anybody was actually in the vehicle or if the vehicle was just parked for some reason on the runway. And the passengers and crew on board were not injured. They were deplaned safely, and no one was injured, which is, I'm very surprised.
All right. Yeah, do yourself a favor and go look at some photos of this pickup
Yeah,
truck.
we'll put the link in the show notes just to check out what the aircraft and what the pickup truck now
What's
look
left
like.
of the pickup truck?
It's the middle of February, which means that we now have data for January from major manufacturers. So we can talk about what Airbus has done as far as orders and deliveries in January and some of the changes they're making to their future products, as well as Boeing's growing backlog, but also somewhat shrinking backlog and their improved delivery schedule. So, Jason, do you want to start with Boeing or Airbus, or should we flip a coin?
Well, we have it with Airbus in our show notes. And really, you started this with what has Airbus been doing? And it might be better off to introduce this topic as what Airbus isn't going to do.
Yes.
It's a long list of
probably a
stuff.
more
Airbus
accurate
has kind of said, you know what, never mind.
Yeah. So last week, I think we talked about the City Next Gen urban air mobility electric, the eVTOL that Airbus has shelved because the batteries aren't there. And this week, Airbus, or at least the reporting is coming out of the French trade union most affected by the postponement of these projects, that Airbus is not proceeding, or at least pushing back its Zero-E project by at least 10 years. So in 2020, Airbus announced a goal of fueling a 100-seat, 1,000 nautical mile hydrogen-powered aircraft. So basically a hydrogen-powered regional jet by 2035. The trade union says that Airbus has told them to prepare for that not happening. They're delaying that by 5 to 10 years. And if I'm being honest, I think that's probably soft. They're reducing the budget by 25% and terminating some of the projects that go along with Zero-E, as well as, and this is the thing I am most
No, don't say it. Don't say it.
They're getting rid of the plan to flight test the hydrogen-powered fuel cell powertrain installed on the rear fuselage of the A380 flying testbed.
Oh, I told you not to say it.
Sorry.
That is crushing. Forget all this other stuff. Hydrogen-powered aircraft, electric-powered aircraft. That was all fantasy for all I'm concerned. But not even getting the tech demonstrator on the A380, that's real. That hurts.
That's a bummer. That's a real bummer.
That stinks. Yeah.
No word on if they're still going to partner with CFM to fly the Rise engine on the A380, though with this announcement, I have to imagine that's somewhat under strain, if not going to be canceled.
I hope not. I just want something cool to look at. Like with all the bad things happening in the world, can't we just have something nice to look at? Even if it's not commercially viable.
20 years, sure.
No, I need it now.
Well, then you're really not going to like this news because in addition to Airbus's announcement, ATR has also said it's pushing back its Evo, which is the hybrid electric version of the ATR 72. That was going to enter service in 2030. That has now been pushed back to 2035. Who knows how many pushbacks we'll see.
So this industry is going to be hinging on SAFs, sustainable aviation fuel, seemingly for the foreseeable future. If battery technology doesn't work, if hydrogen technology doesn't work, if battery electric hybrid doesn't work, we're not left with much options other than SAFs or magic. And I've lost my magic wand, unfortunately, so it seems like SAFs is the answer.
That's a bummer.
Yeah, it is a bummer, but that seems like where we're at. And all the news regarding SAFs these days is also not good. Production is lower than expected and needed. It's expensive. We're in a bit of a pickle here, aren't we?
Maybe we should see if we can power airplanes with pickles.
You know, it would be nice. Pickle juice is salty. You could drink it. You could maybe fuel airplanes with it. I don't know. Someone should look into this.
I agree. Someone should.
You don't know where to go with that, do you?
Airplanes. I really don't. So that's where we're at with future aircraft. Let's talk about your favorite airline and mine, undisclosed airlines. Because Airbus took in a good chunk of business from undisclosed airlines in January.
Yeah, we don't know who undisclosed airlines is. We may never know. But what we do know is that January 2025 was a big month for undisclosed airlines. There were 5 separate orders, I believe. One for 25 A320neo, so that's a pretty substantial order. 10 A330-900, 6 A350-900, 3 A350 freighters, and 1 single solitary A321neo. So undisclosed airlines continues to build up its mega fleet. One day we'll find out who is behind these orders, but today all you know is that it's undisclosed.
There you go. Boeing, for its part, began the year with a higher delivery cadence than last year, which, I mean, to be fair,
bar's real, Boeing.
Hard to do, but they did deliver 45 aircraft, including 40 737 MAX, 1 777 freighter, and 4 787s, including the first 787 for TAG Angola Airlines.
Hey, that's something. Yeah, 4 787s is a real sad number, but yeah, it's better than none.
It's better than none. On the other hand, they also moved 38 777X orders into the we don't think we're actually going to sell these airplanes to a customer accounting bucket. So that's an accounting rule that allows them to move those orders away from expected revenue, with Boeing saying we don't actually think anyone's ever going to
30 something?
38.
That's, I mean, there aren't all that many airlines that ordered the 777X, let alone in numbers that large to suddenly not take them anymore. Who do you think it is? Is it our favorite airline, undisclosed? Because there are 40 orders for the 777X that are apparently undisclosed.
It might be.
Yeah, I don't know. Apparently some of those are.
Bummer.
Yeah, apparently some of them are for Qatar, but that is a large number to suddenly not be confident enough to put on the order book anymore.
Yeah, that's not great. They're still under contract, but that's Boeing thinking we are probably not going to actually sell these. Though they could, in fact, sell them.
They could, but between Air India, ANA, IAG, Cargolux, Cathay, Emirates, Etihad, Ethiopian, Lufthansa, Qatar, Silkway West, Singapore, and unidentified, that's not a huge range of airlines. And I feel like if any one of those decided they didn't want, how many was it? 38?
38.
Yeah. 38 777Xs, we would probably hear something about that, especially considering there aren't all that many on that list that ordered 38 plus of those aircraft. So somebody's going to be talking pretty soon, I feel like.
It's entirely possible. Maybe we'll have more info next week. Boeing ended January with about 5,500 aircraft in the order backlog, the vast majority of which are 737 MAX aircraft, a total of 4,296 737s, 109 767s, which are all of the freighter variety and all need to be built right quick. Although that build might include KC-46s. I'll have to double check if that number gets split out between commercial and military contracts. 427 777s and 722 787s. So there you go.
All right.
Let's head off to Korea, where following the crash of the Jeju 737, Korea is planning on rolling out a wide-ranging set of bird detection and mitigation technologies. That aircraft suffered bird strikes to both engines as it was approaching Won, and now the Korean authorities are going to launch installations at multiple airports that include bird detection radar, imaging, and bird deterrent technology, which includes yelling at birds and scaring birds.
And generally just making loud noises scares them away. There's not all that much you can do to deter birds, but usually it literally is just make loud noises every now and then, and birds get annoyed and leave.
They are also encouraging recruitment drives for anti-bird airports so that they can have multiple staff on site at all times at these larger airports.
I see. They should recruit the birds aren't real people. A real combination of interests there.
All the conspiracy theories just coalescing into one. So, I mean, yeah, good rollout. Hopefully all goes well, and that decreases the incidence of bird strikes in South Korea.
It's tough, especially at airports like where the incident happened. It's on the water. There's only so much you can possibly do. There are many airports where this is a problem, and it's pretty much unsolvable. Here in New York, LaGuardia and JFK, both of them are water adjacent. Actually, everywhere, well, not everywhere, but most of the area, the landmass, or not landmass, the water area around JFK is literally a nature preserve. So it's kind of difficult to weigh how do you deal with the birds versus this is also waterfront real estate that is also a nature preserve. So it is a problem that doesn't really have an answer, but whatever you can do to mitigate it can't really hurt.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. There's only so much you can do. However, if you can do anything, then please do. This is an interesting one. Russia's civil aviation regulator is now telling pilots, you really need to train for worst case navigation loss and flight control failures because of all of the GPS jamming and flight control failures that we ourselves are causing.
Okay, read the thing. Read what you wrote in the show notes, please.
No, I'm not reading that.
Read it, Ian. Read it. Come on.
I paraphrased the late, great Bob Marley.
It's too good to not read.
Then you read it.
No, you wrote it. You brought it up. It's your duty to read what you wrote.
I do not like being put on the spot like this. So the subheading of this particular story is We Be Jammin' and we hope you like jammin' too.
There it is.
Are you happy now?
Yes,
Yeah.
I am quite happy. Thank you.
I would just like to talk about the fact that the Russian regulator is warning pilots that, well, we are jamming GPS, so you need to deal with all of that. And not just GPS, but in Russia's case, GLONASS and things like that.
And it's never going to end.
Also, you need to be prepared for flight control failures because we might shoot you down.
That one's harder to get on board with. Flight crews should probably be familiar on how to fly and navigate without GPS literally anywhere in the world, with or without GPS jamming or spoofing. But you lose me at the part where you say you should figure out how to fly when we shoot you twice with missiles and you lose all your hydraulics and flight control surfaces. That one's a little less rational to tell flight crews to figure out on their own, because you shouldn't do that. But the part about GPS is legit. Figure it out. Learn how to fly without it. You used to do it all the time. There is a time before GPS.
I think that's just a good and interesting reminder of aviate, navigate, communicate. But the second part is where they really lost.
Russia forced GPS's commercialization and adoption by the general public into existence. If you don't know how GPS became available to the public, look it up. It has to do with Russians shooting down a Korean aircraft when they were off course. What was it? West of Alaska, over Russian airspace. And decades later, here we are where Russia itself is saying, now fly again without GPS. So everything has kind of come full circle. Why not?
Just the duality of that statement that they've put out is rather, it irks me. Let me put it that way. Let's talk about some more commercial stuff. We're commercial heavy this week, mostly because we haven't really had a chance to talk about the business of aviation for a few weeks. Indigo, which has been expanding, and then ran up against the fact that if you order planes, you have to wait for them to be delivered before you can fly them.
And also, when you get many of them, they don't work.
That's true. So they said, no, we're going to go a different route. Hey, Norse, can we damp lease some 787s? And Norse said, okay.
I don't like that at all. Damp lease. It's not a term we hear very often. Usually it's dry or wet lease. Damp lease just sounds weird.
Damp lease. Jason, should we explain the distinction between damp lease and
we should. I think most people are familiar with dry and wet lease. If not, you should school them. But damp lease is, well, it must be a combination of the two, right?
So in terms of leasing and Italian beef, wet lease is the best.
You went there. Okay.
But I had to. You can take the guy out of Chicago, but you can't take Chicago out of the guy. So wet lease is when airline B asks airline A for a plane, pilots, and flight attendants.
Everything you need to operate an airplane.
Often called ACME leasing, ACMI, so aircraft, crew, maintenance, and insurance. Dry leasing is when you say, can we borrow your plane for a while and we'll give you some money.
And we'll probably give you the plane back.
And we'll give you the plane back. Damp leasing is when you say, can we have the aircraft and some of the crew? And some of the crew usually means pilots. So usually what will happen on a damp lease is airline B will ask airline A for the aircraft and the pilots and then supply the cabin crew themselves, usually in an effort to provide a consistent cabin experience as much as possible. I mean, the Norse cabin layout is a bit different than I think anything Indigo has, but they'll provide as consistent an Indigo cabin experience as they can with a Norse aircraft and Norse 787.
Well, yeah, it's also a 787, which is famously not an aircraft in Indigo's fleet. So presumably that cabin crew will have to go through training for the 787, which is interesting. So it's not like they can just pluck their flight attendants out of an A321 and plop them in a 787. No, they have to go somewhere to do training. I wonder where maybe they'll just go to Norse headquarters. That'd be fun for them.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
The other place they could get some 787s, though, if they were in the market for used, is Hainan.
Oh, how do they still even have any 787s?
They're trying to sell their entire fleet of 9 787-8s that no one wants. These are 10-year-old 787-8s. Nobody's going to want these, but Hainan's trying to sell them.
There are so many Hainan aircraft operating in every quarter of the globe for airlines that are not Hainan. I have lost track. Especially the 787s, actually, they mostly operating right now, but 737s, A350s, they don't operate any A350s anymore, A330s. Hainan had a huge run-up in the early 2010s and the bubble burst. And a lot of airlines operated Hainan aircraft that were shed from its fleet to gain some revenue or stay afloat. Why wouldn't the 787s be one of them? But 787-8s, I wonder who has the appetite for those.
No one. Literally no one.
Okay. Well, there's your answer. I don't know.
We'll see. Depends on what the price is, right?
Who's desperate enough for 12-year-old Hainan 787-8s? I don't know.
How about Spirit?
Oh, Spirit, man. I wouldn't call them desperate, but what's old is new again, isn't it?
Let's talk about Spirit, because they have said no again to Frontier's new offer. They still don't want to merge with Frontier. They still want to exit bankruptcy alone. And they said, no, we're good.
Okay. If you say so, I don't believe you, but apparently 99% of their shareholders are in favor of going it alone, coming out of bankruptcy, and figuring things out. I personally, my favorite part of this story is last night, the slide deck for Frontier's proposal to buy out Spirit was revealed, or at least this iteration of it. And one of the slides titles this entire thing as Project Galaxy, a very dramatic term for Frontier buying Spirit. I don't know what the origin of Project Galaxy is, but I guess it's good to hype something like that up
internally. It's a reference to
internally.
Galaxy Quest.
I don't know. But what we do know is that Spirit said, get lost. This isn't enough. We'll figure it out on our own. Frontier's probably saying, you should have taken our offer a couple years ago, because this one is nowhere near as good.
Nope. So good luck to Spirit, and good luck to Frontier when it inevitably tries again.
Keep trying. You'll get it eventually.
Exactly. Nolanor, which is the Canadian operator of, among other things, gravel kit equipped 737-200s, is jumping all sorts of generations of aircraft and has what it says secured production slots for what will be a either piloted or not piloted blended wing body Nautilus aircraft that they're calling the Kona. This particular aircraft looks like all of the other blended wing body concept aircraft that we've ever seen, but I'm intrigued that Nolanor is going for this. So they're trying to have a prototype, a full-scale prototype within the next 2 years and begin deliveries in 2028. Nautilus also says that it's developing a 200-passenger blended wing body platform called Horizon. Good luck.
No, I don't like any of this. Oh. Nolanor is supposed to operate the 737-200 for eternity, forever.
And they will. That's mostly why I brought this up. And I thought about this is when I saw the initial announcement is, can you imagine seeing one of these parked next to a 737-200 in Mirabel? Or
maybe I do want this now. Maybe my no is becoming a yes, because that would be quite interesting.
Wouldn't that be so cool?
As long as Nolanor never gets rid of its now, on average, 45-year-old 737-200s.
45 737-200. It's just a baby.
It could go on forever. I mean, we talk about this sometimes, but aircraft can live on forever as long as you keep putting the money into it and maintaining it. Sure, why not? Why not keep operating 737? I mean, this has got to be one of the earliest frames out there. They have one that is over 50 years old. It is half a century old. Line number 354. 737. Let's see where it is right now, just out of curiosity. Not only is this thing still operating, it is thriving. And right now, it is in Montreal, having just operated from Edmonton. So there's just, a 50-year-old 737 bopping around Canada. No big deal. I hope it never ends.
I actually just learned something, Jay. Not about the 737, but about a different aircraft. When they convert DC-3s to Basler BT-67s, they rebuild the entire aircraft. And that rebuild resets the flight hours clock to 0.
See, there's a path forward for the 737-200. Never.
I mean, the pressurization cycle becomes a bit more of an issue here.
Then you fly it under 10,000 feet, Ian, and you just don't pressurize it. Problem solved forever.
Perfect. Done. What more do you want? Jason, let's switch up the order a bit and stick with things that may or may never happen in the future and talk about Boom's second supersonic XB-1 flight.
The last. flights.
The second and last, yes. The XB-1 demonstrator made 13 total flights, 2 supersonic flights, for a total of 6 supersonic flight passes, and it'll never fly again. So I assume it'll end up in a museum somewhere and all that good fun stuff as Boom begins work on its full-size Overture passenger-carrying supersonic plane thingy. But that's not what I really wanted to talk about. ADS-B and GPS and receivers and all of those things, we're always learning something new about each and every one of those every day. As something breaks, as something happens, we figure out, oh, that's interesting. That was unexpected. Oh, that is part of what's supposed to happen, but we've never had a condition for it to happen before. So we've never dealt with supersonic aircraft before, right? And this is the first time that we had an aircraft being tracked making sharp turns at 500 miles an hour broadcasting ADS-B, or 500 knots broadcasting ADS-B. So what we found out is that the filter in GPS receivers tends to break because it says, no, you can't do that. Like there's you just can't do that. We can't process that information. But the aircraft continues sending the data. So through tracking the XB-1, we actually developed better MLAT, basically, and better switching between ADS-B and MLAT so that we could switch as fast as Boom was flying. And as part of that, we've been able to start implementing better switching between ADS-B when coverage drops off and MLAT when we still retain the ability to calculate MLAT positions. So if you're following a flight that's flying through GPS jamming or spoofing or interference of any kind now, the path is going to start looking a lot better when ADS-B drops out and the NIC values fall, which are basically how good is my position uncertainty. Am I certain of my position? I'll continue to use the ADS-B. Am I uncertain of my position below a certain level? And we'll say, no, ADS-B is no good here. Let's go for MLAT. So one of the little kind of edge cases that results in improvement across the service.
All right. Next, we'll have to start worrying about the limitations of GPS itself. I don't think Boom is going to get to that point, but I believe GPS shuts itself off at the receiver level at 1,200 miles per hour, which I think is like something like Mach 2 plus, and has a service ceiling, I think, of 60,000 feet. So if Boom ever eclipses that speed and that ceiling, well, Ian, you're going to have to figure something else out entirely. Or will MLAT just kick in and work
More
from
MLAT.
there? Yeah, okay.
More MLAT.
Look, if Boom ever flies 60,000 feet plus and plus Mach 2, we'll deal with that then.
We'll deal with that. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Alitalia is dead still, but long live Alitalia.
It was never dead. It was only lurking around the corner, waiting for its moment to jump out and scare you and go, I'm back. And it's back.
And it's back.
Sort of, kind of. Never left.
There is now a ITA Airways aircraft with the inspired by Alitalia stenciling on the fuselage.
I do wonder what the Lufthansa group, the new, minority owner, has to think about this. Was it just like someone at the Alitalia hangar, or see, I'm doing it here. The ITA hangar was like, yeah, whatever. We got new owners. Who cares? Just slap it on the plane and see what happens. See if they even notice. This is all sorts of weird.
If you're looking to track this particular aircraft, its registration is EIIFA.
Okay.
Jason, let's close the show with some good news.
There's got to be some good news, right? We've had bad news, other bad news, silly news. Give me some good news.
What do you got for me?
I got for you that everybody, and I mean everybody's, favorite in-flight snack, the Stroopwafel, is back at United in economy on flights over 300 miles. That's exciting just because the Stroopwafel is delicious and it's the best in-flight snack. It beats the pants off of Biscoff cookies, which I think are a terrible in-flight snack. Come at me. Send your hate mail. I don't care. They're terrible. They're crumbly.
Hold on. I don't even have to email. You're on the other side of this microphone from me, and I don't even have to. I'm sorry, what?
They are a terrible in-flight snack. They are delicious, but they are crumbly. And they leave crumbs everywhere. They're a terrible in-flight snack because they leave a mess. As delicious as they are a terrible in-flight snack. A stroopwafel is delicious, and its structural integrity, even while placed over a cup of coffee, cannot be beat. I didn't think you'd think we were going that route, did you?
I didn't know we were getting this far. I would have prepared some sort of, I'm not sure what I would have prepared.
Well, think about it.
But
next week, you can
yeah.
come back with some points about Biscoff cookies and how they're not a terrible in-flight snack. I don't think you can do it, though.
I mean, now I just want some cookies and a stroopwafel.
Thankfully, I have both stroopwafels and Biscoff in my cabinet in the kitchen, so I'm
I keep
probably
a
going to
stash.
smash them together
So-
and go have a bite of both at the same time right now. It's coping mechanism.
That sounds good. So let's end the show with some recipes for deliciousness. If you crush up Biscoff cookies and put it in vanilla ice cream and then put it between two stroopwafels, you have the perfect dessert.
Ooh, yeah. Okay, I could do that in flight. That'd be good.
You could. The flight attendant might think you're nuts, but you can do it.
There are some flights where all the ingredients necessary are on board for that. I think if you fly United Polaris on a transcon route, they will have the Sunday bar. They will have, if it's a morning flight, stroopwafel in the back, and probably also some Biscoff cookies. And if you reasonably ask and be nice about it, can you make me an ice cream sundae and smash all of the economy treats together and crumble it over the top? How could they say
Ian
no?
said.
Ian said you'd do this.
Oh, great. Now I've gotten in trouble with an entire airline's flight attendants.
Leslie, if you're listening, we need to
Let's make it happen. Let's make it happen. All right. And on that note, this has been episode 307 of AvTalk. I am Ian Petchnick here, as always, with
Jason Rabinowitz. Thanks for listening.